Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. Today, in the co-captain's chair, I've been promoting this all week. Mr. George Lamie from, of course, In the Prog seat and for Fusion Friday and the review crew and just about every show here on the channel. What's happening, my friend?
What's going on, dude?
Not much. You ready finally for Angra?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
We've only been talking about this for
months,
a year. I don't know. It's like whatever. I think we had planned to do it earlier, but then we found out that they had a new album coming out, so we kind of put it on hold for a little bit. So now that we've had Cycles of Pain for a while, I think it's safe to say we can go ahead and steamroll through this, right? So Brazilian band, power metal / prog metal. They don't really fit into either camp 100%, but they do both really, really well. They have elements of what you like about both styles of metal, right? They got the real complicated arrangements and the widdly bits and that kind of proggy mentality, but yet they do lots of that straightforward pedal to the metal, speedy power metal type thing. They do the symphonic stuff. They do the ballads. I mean, it's like a little bit of everything, right? But
it depends on the album. It seems like certain albums, they feel like, let's turn this up a notch for this one.
Yeah, for sure. We got 10 albums here, folks, and I will say this was one of the harder rankings that I've personally been involved in a while, because I think so many of these albums, give or take a couple, are of like similar type high quality. And with a band like this, you get, some of these albums are very, very similar, so they vary a little bit here and there. So I had a tough time like kind of putting this in an order. I think George and I were talking. He had like clear like top and bottom, but then everything in the middle just kind of kept changing, and that's kind of how I feel too. So it's one of those rankings where I think if we were to do this again in a couple months, it probably changed significantly, because like a lot of these albums I think very highly of, and there's really not much that separates them. Do you feel the same way, or you think that there's a bit more than that?
I had preconceived slots, and then going through them for this, the stuff in the middle especially kind of scrunched together like, man, you like this more than you remember, or this has got a couple more flaws than you remember. Everything kind of pulled to center.
Yeah, it's so funny how we do this all the time. Like when especially when we have pair ups doing the ranking shows, like, well, usually, and whoever it is, whether it's George and myself or Grant and myself or Rick or whoever, and it's like you send each other notes during the week. You text each other. It's like, well, what do you think? You know what? I remember loving this album more than I do now. And back then I thought it was a classic. And so I texted George a couple days ago with some feelers that I was having here. And George is really good. George keeps the poker face. He doesn't reveal anything to me before we actually sit down and do the taping. So because I was trying to get a little bit of info from him to see which way he was leaning, but he didn't show his hand at all. So, but yeah, I definitely had preconceived notions here too with this, and didn't quite turn out exactly as I thought. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we kind of go through here. So, all right, we've got 10. You want to do like group 3, 3, 3, and then the top one left?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's hear your 10, 9, and 8.
My number 10 is Aqua from 2010. This is the last album with vocalist 2, Edu Falaschi. Obviously, I don't have it to hold up, so that will tell you a little something. This was a disappointment at the time, and even the
art, though, right?
Yeah, really cool. Even the revisit didn't really work for me. That's not to say there's not good songs on here. Hollow, especially Awake from Darkness, those really kick ass. And then on a maybe a little lesser level, you got A Rising Thunder and Rage of the Waters. But this album just has multiple mediocre tunes to me, and I really can't say that about any other Angra album. So, and the other thing is, Edu is struggling on this album. After he left after this album, there was a fairly public spat with them of him saying that, he wasn't ever really a great fit because it caused him to sing out of his range. He's not a high guy, which is news to me, because if you go to his first album. He does pretty well with that, but
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
yeah, he came out and said, it was a little unnatural for him to sing high so much, and he damaged his voice and all this stuff. It got a little ugly for a bit there, but you can hear it. I can hear it anyway. The slight downturn as he goes through the albums, and this one, yeah, he just sounds like he's struggling a little bit. It's not major. You wouldn't be that against it, but between that and the songwriting, it's enough for me to put it at 10. Along those lines, number 9, I got Aurora Consurgence. This one is one of those albums that came back for me with this. I thought I had a lesser opinion of this than I do, but going through it, yeah, this is another good one. I would say everything from here on, I would recommend. Aqua's the only one I probably wouldn't. Got a nice 1-2 punch opening here, Course of Nature, and The Voice Commanding You is, for me, the best song on here. Even Ego Painted Gray, it's a pretty decent mellow tune, actually. Ballads going forward are not maybe their strength, but that's a pretty good one. Scream Your Heart Out is another one of the best tunes. That's one of the power metal type tunes. But there are a couple stinkers here. Breaking Ties and Abandoned Fate, the bonus track, that's not very good either. So, or not the bonus track, the closer. So that in this company was enough for me to slide it down to the 9 hole.
I will say this band has had an issue with closers throughout their career. We'll talk more about that as we go through.
That will come up, yes.
Yeah.
And the old bugaboo, the 1 minute thing. They're big for that too, on a lot of these. My number 8, I don't have a hard copy of, much to my dismay as I went through my stuff, is Omni 2018. This is the second of the trio with Fabio Leone. Again, another great 1-2 opening pair, Light of Transcendence and Travelers of Time, which is probably my favorite song on this one. Really good song. This is the first album without Kiko Loriero, longtime superstar guitar player.
Yeah.
He does contribute one tune, War Horns, and he guests on that. Sounds weird to hear him guesting on an Angra album, but that's what it is, At this time, he's in Megadeth already. So
yeah, Mr. Mustaine was like, nah, that's all you can do. Sorry.
Yeah. I haven't heard a peep about it since he's out of Megadeth, but you wonder if he's talking about coming back. I mean, it's not
well,
fair.
I mean, Angra's certainly not as busy as Megadeth, right? So I know he's got lots of family issues going on. So I would assume he could probably do Angra again if he wanted to.
Yeah, it's a matter of what do they do with the guy Marcelo, but
yeah,
who knows? Yeah, so War Horns is one of the best tunes. Magic Mirror is a prog tune. Even the albums that are very power metal, they always throw a little something to the proggers, and Magic Mirror is that track on here. Seems like they decided that they don't like Fabio on the ballads because Raphael sings both Always More and Bottom of My Soul on this one. Bottom of My Soul, he makes me feel it. He's got a throatier voice,
yeah,
a little grit to it. Maybe depending on what they're looking. Fabio can be a little pitchy, so on a ballad that kind of stands out more. So maybe that's what they're thinking there, or they just like Raphael on ballads. I don't like the guest growlies on Black Willow's.
What a surprise!
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to shock you with that one.
No, you're not a fan of Alyssa, huh?
Yeah, not so much. And the song's okay though, so if you like the growlies, you'll be good. You'll be good with that one. And this one has something they've done 2 or 3 times. They do an orchestral closer, and it's just a amalgam of all the melodies from the songs on the album done in an orchestral format. So depending on your level of affection for that, I mean, I like that stuff a lot, but oftentimes by the end of the album, I don't need a greatest hits of the melodies of the album at the end. It's kind of like a wasted track to me. Not bad, but I'd probably like another song. So that's my number 8, Omni.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting how talking about the vocalist here. So you've got three really good singers here, but you have to wonder the guy in the middle, Edu. To me personally, and I think he's a fine singer, but I think he's really overshadowed by the guy that came before him and the guy that came after him on pure talent. I think I don't know. It's
And then I was on, like I always am for these rankings. I go look and see what people are saying on Rate Your Music, and he's a lot of people's favorites. So it's just like vocalists are so subjective.
yeah, for sure. He's really good. I mean, you can't. All three of these guys are great, and obviously you got Andre, who was the kind of the prodigy vocalist, right? That everybody thought was going to go on to do great things, and
Yes.
after Angra, he really didn't, and then he died really young. And then you got Fabio, who's got all this pedigree with all these other bands, and he's done a million things. And then you got Edu, who's kind of out of the three of them, probably the one that has the least amount of kind of press out there. But yeah, beloved, and he's the albums he sang on are really strong albums, right, for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So let's see. My number 10, I'm going to go, George, if you could hold it up, I'm going to go with Aurora Consurgens. Their 6th album from 2006. So we were kind of like along the same lines with this one. So, here we have the same lineup as the two that came before it. The Course of Nature, the opener, is just absolutely terrific. And you almost get this impression that the band wants to get even heavier. And I think I really like when this band blends that kind of heavy power prog metal thing with all those Brazilian influences, the little percussive bits and all this like little flamenco stuff. I mean, I think it's a banger of a song, and I love the fact that they throw all that stuff in there. The voice commanding you is kind of that speedy power metal thing with the kind of nice, cool orchestral keyboards in the background. Ego Painted Gray, kind of more of a straightforward type of metal track, but it's good. Blazing Lead guitars. Breaking Ties, it's kind of like a softy ballad. I'm hit or miss with their ballads sometimes. On occasion, they do them really, really well. Other times, they just kind of like kill the momentum of the album. It's kind of what this one does here. But it does have a really great Kiko guitar solo. I mean, this guy is just tremendous. Salvation Suicide, another speedy ripper. Window to Nowhere, that's a little bit more complex, a little more proggy. So Near So Far, that's a little bit more symphonic. You're going to get Passing By is also mellow. Scream Your Heart is really good. And then, you got Abandoned Fate, which is the kind of like acoustic-y closer. Again, I've in my notes, and as I was getting ready to do this, it's amazing how many of their albums end on like this kind of like mellow note. And it's just like, was there anything wrong with going out with a complete bang on the album? You start the album off. Most of their album openers, other than these little instrumental interlude things, are complete bangers, right? And then you end the album in like a limp kind of fashion. And I don't understand that. It's like, and they do that quite a bit throughout this catalog, which is just
you mentioned that yesterday on Funhouse with Martin too.
Yeah.
About bands that do that. And I don't get it.
I don't either. I really don't. So, and it's frustrating throughout this catalog because, they take you through with this journey where you're going through all sorts of stuff. And then, you want the album to just go out in bombastic fashion, like they've taken you through the whole album. And then it's like either this orchestral bit or it's this acoustic ballad. And I'm just kind of like, really? That's how you're going to close this? It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. All right. Number 9, I'm going to go with Angels Cry, the debut from 1993. Yeah, I was a little surprised. I think for me, there's really no bad albums here. I think for me, Aurora Consurgens probably is the album that I have the most amount of issues with, but I still really like it. I think that everything from here on in, I really enjoy quite a bit. I think the debut album is it's really strong. I think the best is yet to come from them, but there's really good stuff on here. It's a good chunk of it is kind of like, that fast blazing speed metal with proggy elements. You can hear the Halloween influence like right off the bat with Carry On. And, here you got Andre Matos, who is just such a great singer, like right off the bat. I mean, he's probably the star of the show here. And you got Kiko and Raphael, just there's guitars all over the place on here. Nice use of synths on the album too, I think, which is good. Time is a really good track. Angels Cry kind of again reminds me of like kind of Halloween, Gamma Ray, and I think that probably the reason why I rank this one so low is like there's a lot of that kind of speedy power metal thing on here, and I don't mind that, but there's like more of it on here that I think I'm comfortable with. But there is some other really good stuff. Stand Away, Never Understand is really good. Streets of Tomorrow is probably the heaviest song on here. I could have done without the cover of Wuthering Heights. I mean, I even when I first got this album like 30 years ago or whatever it was, I was, like, God, it's well done, but it doesn't need to be here. I'd rather hear some more stuff that they're doing. And yeah, Evil Warning is kind of got that neoclassical thing going on. Then you got Lasting Child, which is this big orchestral metal thing. I think it's a really good album. Love the album cover art. I kind of surprised myself too that I ranked it this low, but like I said, this could change it anytime. But I think it's a strong debut. I think they would get really better really quickly starting with the next album. So that's my number 9. And my number 8, I'm going to go with Temple of Shadows from 2004, which is their 5th album. Same lineup as the Rebirth album. Okay. Really good stuff on here. Spread Your Fire, symphonic power metal, good amount of speed, but not too much. Angels and Demons, total ripper of a song. I love the guitar duels on some of these albums between these two dudes is just absolutely amazing. Kiko and Raphael just absolutely shredding on this one. Love it. Waiting Silence, got a great solo from Kiko, nice and melodic. Really catchy too. Wishing Well is a great track. Great hooks on that. Temple of Hate, which has Kai Hansen, that does some work with them on this album, and that's got all sorts of neoclassical stuff going on. Really like that. And then the Shadow Hunter. Again, every time they add in all these Brazilian elements, I'm totally on board. That's a great track. No Pain for the Dead. That doesn't do a lot for me. It's kind of like it's soft, it's moody. It's like it doesn't really go anywhere. Winds of Destination is good. You got Hansi Kirch, who shows up on this album as well. Sprouts of Time is pretty good, nice and melodic. Morning Star Cranks, Late Redemption, Gate 8, Symphonic. I think for me, I think this album is a little too long. I think probably could have been trimmed by maybe 2 tracks, maybe tighten it up just a little bit, but there's some really good stuff on here. It's definitely one I would easily recommend. And that's my number 10, 9, and 8. Back to
Number 7, Secret Garden, 2014. This is kind of a rebirth for them. You got the new singer with Fabio, and you have a new drummer with Bruno Valverde. The best of their 3 drummers to me. They're largely a power metal band, so there's only so much room. But when they do the proggy stuff, he's the guy.
And as we know from Whom Gods Destroy, right? He is the guy.
Yeah. If you watch his playthroughs on YouTube, you're like, this is the guy from Angra. He's doing Dave Weckl stuff. I mean, he can play.
Yeah.
Thing I didn't love about this one is, and they've kind of kept at it from here on out, although lesser, is all the guest starring. You got Doro Pesch guesting on the So Crushing Room, and Simone Simons guests on the title track, which is a little too Disney for me. It's kind of like a Disney soundtrack kind of song to me. But there are several smoking tunes here. You got Newborn Me, Black-Hearted Soul, Upper Levels. That one smokes. A little bit proggy. Perfect Symmetry. That's another one. That's the really good stuff. The closer, Silent Call. Again, a feeble ballad to close the album. I don't get that. Certain versions of this, including this one, have a cover of Synchronicity 2, Police cover.
Yeah, mine does.
Didn't sound like a good idea to me, but boy, I like it. I think it came out really good. So yeah, this honestly, at this point, after those last couple of Edu albums, I wasn't sure if they weren't just gonna slide away and be someone I didn't care about anymore. But the Fabio era in general has been a real pleasant surprise, and this one is no exception. So that's my number 7. And number 6 is Rebirth, 2011. The first one after the upheaval, after Matos leaves. When Matos leaves, he doesn't leave by himself. The rhythm section goes with him. So you got 3 new guys on this album, which, that could really mess with you. But flawless handling it. The new guys are all, the rhythm sections guys are about as good. And Edu on this is Edu's best album to me. Again, with him coming out and saying later he couldn't sing high, there's a lot of high vocals on this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is kind of like it feels like they kind of tried to emulate Angels Cry with this one. They have a lot of fast, speedy stuff. Though there are some frilly tunes too. But you got one of those little boring intros, and you got Nova Era, which is pedal to the metal, power metal tune. Acid Rain turns up the symphonic elements. Unholy Wars, that's my track off this album. To me, that sounds like a thematic continuation of Carolina 4, which is their best song ever in a lot of people's eyes. Yeah. It seems like it's kind of patterned after that. Running Alone, another really good power metal tune. And they got a Chopin adaptation at the end. That's okay. I actually wished for a little more with that. But a couple of the ballads on here, they're not terrible, but they are in the midst of all this power stuff. They do feel like a little bit of a letdown because none of them is really great. Still, when this came out, man, we were all geeked about it, because we were worried. Oh man, no Matos, what's this going to be? Oh, it's good. So that's recommended. My number 5 is Cycles of Pain, the latest. Came out in December. Clearly, I think it's the best of the Fabio era, but I could be wrong. It's their latest in the effort to prog it up. It's kind of like not individual prog songs now, but like sections. Like they put in, you got a regular power metal song, and all of a sudden you get to the solo interludes, and all this stuff's going off. Like Ride Into the Storm, that's one of those. The middle section of that is bonkers. Dead Man on Display, another one kind of like that. And there's some more textured stuff, Tide of Changes, and then Vida Seca, that's got all the Brazilian stuff that they do so well. Like you, man, when they do that stuff, that's what sets them apart. I don't know why they don't lean into it even more, but they probably lose the power metal guys if they did that.
That's a good point.
They probably would. You can only do so much of that.
Enough of that percussion bullshit, right? Give me the fast double bass drum. Yeah, it's like I totally get it.
Gods of the World, another good fast one. Generation Warriors is another one like that. Really good fast tune. Overall, this is just really, really good. I'd say the title track is probably the weakest, or maybe the closer, Tears of Blood, but neither one of them is bad. I mean, there's no bad song on this. I believe I had it top 5 last year. I think I had it 5th. So
yeah, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was a top 10 for me, and it won the Sea of Tranquility readers poll for best album of 2023 on our webzine. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I remember I had it, and I think Steven had it on his list too. So obviously my favorite of the Fabio era, and highly recommended.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Back to me. All right. So where are we at? Number 7, right?
765, yeah.
All right. My number 7 is Aqua. Last album with Edu Falaschi on vocals. Ricardo Confessori comes back on drums for this album only. Again, kicks off amazingly. You got that little, intro thing, and then you got a Rising Thunder, which just completely destroys. Love it. And again, Kiko and Raphael, such a underrated. And I'm just as guilty. Like when you talk about the great guitar teams of all time in metal, I mean, I always overlook these two dudes, and they're really, really great.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just never talk about them. Never. I'm just realizing right now, I'm like, why do I never include these guys when I talk about the great guitar teams? But they are. Awake from Darkness, good, epic. Lease of Life, that's okay. Rage of Waters, love that. Love the middle solo section. You got Felipe's bass solo, and then the guitars kick in. I mean, it's a great bass player too. Really good. Spirit in the Air is nice and proggy. Hollow is great, dark, menacing. Love that. Monster in Her Eyes is kind of cool, nice, differently textured. Got some cool keys and guitars and stuff like that. Weakness of Man is one of my favorites on here. It's catchy, but it's got this real dramatic feel, and then the guitar solos are just like mind blowing. Totally love it. Ashes is the closer on here, and again, I think you mentioned it too. It's got nice melodies. It's got this kind of soaring quality, but Jesus, you got the whole, most of the rest of this album, you know, with other than a couple here and there. I mean, one of the reasons why I think I rank this higher than you is because there are some songs on here I think that just, they're so great that even though there's a couple of weak ones on this album, I think the great ones for me just elevate it up a little bit more. But again, you know, you can't end an album like this that's got such bangers on it as it takes you through this journey. And then Ashes, which again is a nice number, but it's just like kind of like, you know, ends it with a whimper almost. So, but I think overall it's a really good album. Some good stuff on here. So that's my number 7. And I love the cover art there too. Number 6, I'm going to go with Fireworks, which is their third album from 1998. Last with Andre on vocals, last with Lewis, you know, so like you mentioned, he basically let's take everybody with me when I go, right? But I think Wings of Reality, I think, kind of picks up the symphonic aspects of Holy Land, maybe a little bit heavier though. So there is some bleeding over of the second album, but I think there's also they're trying to capture some of the relentlessness of the first album on this one too. Petrified Eyes is a total ripper. Love it. Matos is just singing up a storm on that. Kizban, nice and melodic and catchy, good hooks on that. Metal Icarus, it's total speed metal. Paradise is more of kind of like a mid-paced cruncher. I really like that one a lot. And then you got Mystery Machine, which is a total, you know, you talk about how like sometimes in the middle of their songs, they go through these ridiculous, like kind of proggy twists and turns and complex arrangements. I mean, that one is just absolutely amazing. Title track is great. Drums are killing it. Great guitar solos. Extreme Dream is another, you know, ripper. Love that one. I don't really like Gentle Change too much. And Speed to me is just, let's just do a fast song just to do a fast song. I don't like when these guys do, let's just do a fast song and do a fast song. I like when they kind of mix it up a little bit more. But otherwise, a really strong album. And again, would see the last with Andre and the band to kind of what I'm sure he thought was to go and do bigger and better things. And I don't know if it actually worked out that way for him, but good album nonetheless. And then my number 5 is Rebirth, the 4th album. First with Edu, first with Felipe. Aquila, how's he saying? Aquiles Priester, is that how he says his name?
Aquiles Priester.
Aquiles Priester, yeah.
Try to
yeah, you got Gunter Werno from Vanderplas helping out on keyboards a little bit, which is kind of cool. I tell you what, Nova Era shows they haven't lost the touch. I mean, you know, and I never thought that Edu was Andre Part 2. You know, who can live up to that guy, right? But I think he does a fine job on this album. And I think, like you, I think this is his best performance from a vocal perspective on all these albums. Millennium Sun, good track, good vocal harmonies. Acid Rain is absolutely terrific. Might be my favorite song on here. Just energetic prog metal, right? All sorts of cool, intricate bits and stuff. Just really, really good. Heroes of Sands got that kind of majestic feel. I like that. Unholy Wars. Kicks it. I mean, it goes off in all sorts of different directions. I mean, it's just like you mentioned. It's like fast, raging power metal 1 second, then intricate prog metal the next. Just absolutely love it. Great, great track. Title track is awesome. Judgment Day again brings in those Brazilian rhythms and stuff. Love when they do that. Running Alone is solid. But then you got Visions Prelude, which again ends the album on just kind of like this mellow kind of note. And I just don't get why they do that, because this is a pretty killer album, I think. So, yeah, that's my 7, 6, and 5.
We should mention that, especially in this Edu era, the albums are produced by Dennis Ward, and man, he's pretty good, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Really nice sound on all the Edu stuff.
I would say for the most part, all these albums sound pretty damn good from a production
standpoint. There's no glaring. Maybe Angel's Cry is a little.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
A little dingy, but that's probably a budget thing.
Yeah.
All right. My number 4 is Fireworks. This is probably the most, I think it's probably the most out of the norm slot choice for me because a lot of the fans are indifferent to this album. Reason being that there is a relative lack of fast tunes here. You got Wings of Reality, great opener. That's pretty upbeat. That's Andre, all the way to Andre composition. You can hear his thumbprint all over that. Metal Icarus is another power metal one and one of the best tunes on here. And then the rarity, the super rarity, the closer, Speed, is upbeat, but like you said, it might be a tad generic. That's a Kiko tune. Good guitar playing in that one. The solo section's really cool, but as their fast songs go, it's probably not way up there.
Yeah.
The reason I probably have this higher than the fan base is I like the traditional metal tunes on here. Paradise is very much a traditional metal tune. Great guitar solo from Kiko. Like you said, Mystery Machine and Extreme Dream. I want to mention the solos on this album. This to me is the best soloing album. I mean, one of these songs they're trading off and they both sound like Steve Morse on it. I mean, really incredible. The other thing about this album is I think the ballads on here are better than most of the other albums. Like Lisbon, people don't even look at it as a ballad. It's so good. It's majestic. It's got the big string work. It's one of their popular songs from this album. They would always play it live. I mean, that's a really good tune. Fireworks is another ballady tune that again with the orchestration. And Gentle Change, I like more than you. Actually, of the mellow tunes, that's really good. I think Raphael mostly wrote that one. So kind of sets apart that this is kind of all drawn together. That it's a little low on standouts, but it also doesn't have any kind of crevices here. You're likely to just want to listen to this, and I think it's one of Andre's best performances, so I have it up at number 4. And number 3 is debut, Angels Cry. We came upon these guys. This guy I was jamming with at the time, Pete Pardo, the guitar player. He would get that Young Guitar magazine from Japan, and there was an article in there about we couldn't read it. Obviously, we don't read Japanese, but there was an article in there about Dream Theater clones, or these are the bands that are getting signed because Dream Theater is big now. And one of them was Angra. They had this picture of this, and they had a picture of Holy Land, which had just come out. And so we started getting some of those bands, and granted, they don't really sound like Dream Theater, but
no, not at all.
no. But I think they just, a lot of people, when they want to describe proggy, they just throw Dream Theater's name in there. So it was a lot of, this is like Halloween meets Dream Theater. Well, no, not really, but it's Halloween with some, proggy interludes. Like you said, it's very Halloween, very power metal. Like traditional power metalists probably like this album a lot more than most people. The rare, really good, essential 1 minute and change opener, Unfinished Allegro, that is killer. Matos is a college educated, he's degree in music guy, classical piano. He's got all that stuff going on. And he shows it on that one. Carry On, one of their best songs ever. It's for the fast power metal-y songs. I'm not sure you can top it. Title track, another good one. Got a symphonic middle section where they quote somebody. I don't exactly remember who, but they quote a well-known classical progression. Stand Away, that's a chance for Matos to show his range, which is really silly. When we found these guys, we're like, we finally heard a guy whose voice was pure and powerful, a la Freddie Mercury. Like he's got that kind of range and character. We were just blown away.
Yeah, I think because at the time, we were, this was early 90s. I think we were still all not quite gotten over those glory years of Halloween with Kiski on board, right? And thinking that was one of the best guys to do this sort of thing. And then you hear this band and you're like, whoa, it's like this guy Matos is like on a different level, right?
Yeah, he did a couple albums with a Brazilian band called Viper before this. And he's like 17 and 19 on those albums. And man, his voice at that point was unrefined, but super power, man. It was no surprise that he ended up in a band this good because someone had to snap him up. He was just
Yeah.
had that kind of voice. Never Understands, one of my favorite tunes on here. Like almost 8 minutes and change. You got guest solos from the two guys in Gamma Ray. That's a really good tune. Like you said, Streets of Tomorrow, heavy tune. Evil Warning, they put that out as a single, and I get it. I mean, it's got all the symphonic stuff, the speedy power metal bits. Again, Lasting Child, not a great closer. Not terrible, though. Overall, kind of an interesting story. As they went into the studio, Charlie Bauerfeind produced this, and he's a well-known German producer. When they got to the studio, he heard their drummer, and he was like, "Nah, this is I'm not doing it with this guy." So they had to get another drummer. So at the last instance, they got Alex Holsworth from Siege is Even. Otherwise, he wasn't going to do it. Man, talk about being put in a bind. Get rid of your drummer. I'm not producing it. But they did it.
Drummer, it's your debut album, and the drummer is like, yeah, sorry, the producer doesn't want you. You're out of the band. It's like, what?
Yeah, I read an interview with Matos where like that was a really hard thing to do, and basically Raphael was his best friend in the band, so they elected Raphael to break the news to him.
Terrible.
But yeah, slight production issues aside, very slight. I mean, it sounds good enough. If you're on the power metal end of it, that's one to go for. My number 2, Temple of Shadows. I mean, I just had this on our 2004 show on Prog Seat. I think this is the closest as they've gotten to their peak. Spread Your Fire, incredible for the speedy stuff. One of the best pseudo openers because they got one of those little things on here again. Angels and Demons is the best song on here. That's got crazy soloing sections. That's pretty close to when they get to Dream Theater-esque execution levels. Tight, fast, incredible. Temple of Hate with Kai Hansen. Not one of my favorite singers, really. I mean, but song is great. The Shadow Hunter, I love that tune. Like you said, the Brazilian influences. It's the proggiest thing on here. Like 8 minutes and change. That song, though, if people want to go listen to it down the stretch. You can really, it's like the first inklings of hearing Edu trying to do something he cannot do. He's hitting these notes that kind of cringy. Go listen to that and see if you agree. Down the stretch, it's killer. The tune with Hansi, When's the Destination? I like that song a lot too. Again, not a favorite singer of mine, but he sounds good on that. And Gate 13, again, is one of these orchestral, greatest hits of the melodies of the album before. This one's pretty good. I actually like it. The arrangement of it's good, but I would still prefer like a fast song, a power metal-y tune at the end. But this album's close to as flawless as they get for me, except for obviously my number 1. So my number 2.
You much into Blind Guardian at all?
No, that's I've heard a couple and it didn't grab me at the time. It's been 15 years since I heard any, so maybe a revisit is in order.
Yeah, good band. I know a lot of people who just absolutely love them to death. I like them a lot. I find a lot of their albums have a very samey type of thing going on, but I do like them. I've seen them live a couple times. They're a good band.
I think if you polled power metal fans, they might be Big 4 material.
I would say so.
I mean, a lot of people dig them.
Yeah. I mean, I could see why. There's a lot of qualities I think that are there for people who like this style of metal for sure. All right, my number 4. Again, this top 4 could move around and change, but I'm gonna go with Omni at number 4 from 2018, 9th album. First with Marcello Barbosa on guitar, replacing Kiko Loriero. What's that?
What do you think of him?
He's really good. He's not Kiko.
Yeah.
Right? He's really good, though. He's really good.
Yeah.
Again, Light of Transcendence kicks off the album. I mean, they just nail openers on most of these albums. Just such a great track. Travelers of Time, Brazilian grooves, it's heavy. Love that. I think Fabio is singing great on this album. Black Widow's Web. I like that song. You got Sandy Lima on the melodic female vocals. You got Alyssa White Gluse from Arch Enemy on the harsh vocals. I think it's a good, catchy, heavy song. Again, it's almost like they're jumping on the bandwagon to get some harsh vocals on a power metal album, right? Because everybody's been doing it in recent years. But I think it's a great song. I really like it a lot. Insania is a complete earworm track. Just absolutely love it. I love the chorus. Just
sticks in your head, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, big time. Just a great song. Yeah. And again, I think this album, for me, one of the reasons why this album is ranking so high is because there are that handful of tracks that are just so good. Bottom of My Soul, again, just emotional, hooky, symphonic. Love the chorus on it. Really good. War Horns is terrific. You mentioned before Kiko's on that one. That's great song. I love Caveman. I think that's a really good crusher. Magic Mirror is a dynamite one. Love that one. I mean, these guys can do the real heavy and melodic stuff, which is really great. Always More, kind of a softie. They get the big epic 2-part title track. And again, part 1 of the title track is totally cranks, and then part 2 is all this mellow classical stuff revisiting previous themes. I don't know why they do that. Otherwise I thought this would have been a great big epic to end the album with. But otherwise, I really like this album a lot, again, because there's a handful of tracks on here that I think are just absolutely amazing. So that's my number 4. My number 3, I'm going to go with, surprisingly, Cycles of Pain. 10th and most recent album. I listened to this a ton since this came out late last year. And, a lot of times when I do these rankings, when bands have a more recent release that came out before we do the ranking, I tend to rank the new album pretty low because I just haven't had enough time with it yet, right? But this one has really kind of sat with me really well. And I think that the current lineup is just firing on all cylinders here. Ride Into the Storm. Great. Again, just another really good opening track. You got obviously the opening instrumental that leads it in. Dead Man on Display is really catchy. Tide of Changes, 2-part, kind of proggy. It's really like that a lot. Vita Seca, good melodies, nice and symphonic. Gods of the World is totally crushing. Good, memorable chorus on that. Really like that a lot. Love the title track. Again, it goes more. I think you mentioned that they're going more for the prog stuff on this album, which is fine with me. Faithless Sanctuary, again, another really prog metal track. Good hooks on there, nice rhythms and whatnot. And Here and Now is catchy. Generation Warriors, but then Tears of Blood, a softie to close the album. Why, guys? Why? I don't know. But I really like this a lot. It's ranking pretty high for me. And in my number 2, so here's where I had a lot of issues going through this. I mean, I debated this all week. And again, sometimes it's just a matter of where your headspace is at the time when you're doing these rankings and re-listening to albums. If we were to do this 10, 20, 30 years ago, this would have been my number 1 easy. I wouldn't even thought about it. And I thought going in, this was going to be my number 1 because everybody picks this as their number 1. My number 2 is Holy Land. Often hailed as a symphonic power metal classic, and it is, right? Their second album, it's a concept album, lots of guest singers, you got strings, you got choirs on here. Nothing to Say, so majestic, big riffs, big sweeping orchestrations, love it. Matos just sounds terrific on here. I mean, if you want to hear who Andre Matos is and what he's all about, this is really the album you got to check out. Silence and Distance, good slow builder of a track. Again, the use of keyboards and orchestral elements on this album are just absolutely amazing. And I think Riccardo Confessori's drums on this album are great, and he's at his best on Carolina 4. I mean, that is just such an earworm song, right? George, do you remember when this album first came out? Everybody was talking about this song, right? You talked about this album, and that's the first thing you talk about. It's like, just go listen to this song. That'll tell you all you need to know about this album. So good. Title track is just absolutely lovely. Piano, synths, and flute and percussion, great vocals. The Shaman, great symphonic metal track. Make Believe is just gorgeous. And I think another one of the, if you want to pick a song to showcase what Andre Matos is all about, I think Make Believe is a good one to showcase because he's just amazing on that. Zito is your raging speed power metal track on the album, which not a lot of that on this album. That's why I'm surprised. You know, sometimes you have to wonder. It's like, I know a lot of power metal fans hold this album in high esteem, but there's not a lot of like some of the traditional power metal stuff on this record. It's very, very different. Lullaby for Lucifer, again, takes the album out on a kind of a mellow note, whatever. But I think, you know, there's really no other album in the catalog that's quite like this. It's really lovely, big symphonic, orchestral, prog/metal album. But again, for whatever reason, in the last 2 weeks, I think I like another album a little bit better. But that could change next week. So I'll give you some chance to talk about the Holy Land.
Do you know what Catino thinks of this catalog?
I don't, to be honest. He never talks about them, but I don't know. I would assume he probably loves them, but
is he a proggy guy or not so much?
Not as much. Okay,
so he'd be a good barometer to way a power metals fan sees their catalog. Because I was reading a bunch of reviews, and they have their own particular viewpoint. My number one is Holy Land. Their viewpoint of this is it's not power metal-y enough. It's too frilly.
Right? Yeah, it's too much. Yeah.
Too much orchestration. What's with the strings and the flutes, and so
I think going back to the '90s, I think because when everybody started to get kind of swept away in this new wave of prog rock and prog metal in the '90s, all of us were gravitated towards this album because this was the most proggy and orchestral and symphonic album in their catalog at the time. And I think that's why, like, especially back in the day, like Angels Cry didn't really resonate with me as much as this one. And now maybe today, because I don't listen to as much symphonic, power metal type stuff, and I like the more straightforward, heavier stuff. That's probably why this dropped down a little notch for me. But this was top of the heap back in the day.
Yeah.
I would probably assume that Rich Catino would like Angels Cry way more than this one. And
that would be my guess, but
probably the Edu era, probably he would like way more than this. But then again, but he loves Camelot. I'm gonna have to tell him that we were talking about him on this episode so he can go watch it. I really would. It's a great question. I really would love to know his take on this catalog because I really honestly I don't know.
Get him to put his picks in the comments if he knows the catalog. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him to do that because I don't honestly. In all the years I know Rich, I don't know if I've ever had a conversation with him about Angra, which is kind of weird because there's certain bands he and I talk about all the time. Not these guys, to my knowledge, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's because he doesn't like the proggy bits. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it could be.
For me, that's why this album was so alluring. Is obviously I'm a prog guy too, so the addition. I'm not a big. I think you're the same, but I'm not a big straight power metal guy. To me, power metal becomes interesting when you put something else in it, symphonic, prog, whatever it may be.
And that's why Gamma Ray doesn't really do a hell of a lot for me. I appreciate them and I can listen to them. And speaking of Rich Catino, he loves Gamma Ray. So maybe there's our answer right there, right? I think I agree with you. I like power metal when there's a little more complex music. And, but then again, in saying that, I love like Primal Fear. Right, because that's got that Judas Priest aspect to it, the big, super crunchy guitars, and it's not all faster than the speed of light stuff. I don't really like the straightforward faster than speed of light power metal. I really don't have patience for that.
This is the antithesis of that. A too long, pointless intro, but then right to Nothing to Say, which is one of the best power metal songs that they ever did. I think it probably is. Yeah. It's heralded by the fan base. Silence and Distance starts out mellow, gets proggy. Carolina 4 is just everything. It's one of my favorite songs of the entire 90s. I mean, I just love that song. I don't think you could do any better. You got the Brazilian drums intro into the speedy Halloween bits, and then you get to the middle, you got all these strings, you got the bass solo, and break out into these crazy guitar solos. Matos just emoting over the whole thing. I don't know how many parties we had here, and someone's singing along, "Took the river to the shore." People love that melody than in the chorus. Holy Land, kind of. I think I read that that song became the cornerstone for how this album came about. Matos had that song as a demo, and they heard it, and they wrote the entire concept around it. It's about colonization of Brazil in like the 16th century, and the way he had all the orchestration that kind of led them to build the rest of the album under that umbrella. So that's how this album is easily the most orchestration on any of their albums. Shaman, really good tune. Andre would take the name of that and make that his band name for the when he left Angra. Make Believe might be their best ballad. They released it as a single. That's the kind of confidence they had in it. So that tells you that they knew they had a good ballad. Like you said, Zito is like, I mean, proto the example of a good power metal tune. It's just incredible soloing, ridiculous soloing in that. The only little down point is the way they kind of fade off this album. Deep Blue is like an organ ballad. It's not bad, but it is a step down from Zito, obviously. Yeah. And then Lullaby for Lucifer. What's that doing on here? I don't know. Yeah. I think it's concept driven because the lyrics into it, it's like a bossa nova, and the lyrics are connected to the story. So that's an example of the concept making a problem for you with the album. It's making a lesser album. I did want to mention they put out an EP of Freedom Call after this. And the reason was a lot of the guys, I know Raphael was one of them. This is from the same writing sessions as Holy Land. And they wanted Freedom Call on to close the album because that's an upbeat power metal-y tune. Much better than Lullaby for Lucifer. And between the producer, whoever else was involved, they decided to go with that Lullaby for Lucifer. But that just indicates how deep these writing sessions were because they had Freedom Call, they had Queen of the Night, which is a song from their pre-first album demo that they redid. That should have been on there. And then they had Live and Learn, and Spell, two more fast songs. And those ended up actually on the Hunters and Prey EP with Edu a few years later. But those songs were all written in the Holy Land sessions, which just goes to show you how prolific they were at that time.
It probably just could have been a double album. I mean, it's long as it is, right? So why not just make it a double disc album and just...
Yeah, if they were at the point in their career where they could pull that off, it would have been
kind of hard for a second album, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the label was probably like, a double album? I don't think so. But they had the material. They could have done it. Because there was a couple more demos, Eyes of Christ, and I think there was one more. Oh, Reaching Horizons, which is another from their old demo that they redid. So, yeah, they could have done it for sure. Also, people want to know, maybe they never heard it, this EP has a cover of Judas Priest Painkiller, which is actually pretty nuclear. I mean, definitely worth checking out. But yeah, Holy Land, I assumed it would be my number one, and when I revisited, yeah, it's my number one.
All right, so my number one, by process of elimination, again, surprised me here. I went with Secret Garden, 2014, 8th album. First album with Fabio. Again, one of those albums where I think there's a handful of tracks that I just love so much, and it just kind of, at least for right now, elevated it for number one. I think Bruno sounds terrific on here. First album with the band. Last to feature Kiko. It's almost like he's wanting to go out with a bang before joining Megadeth. I don't think they miss a beat with this brand new lineup at all. Newborn Me kicks total butt. I think Fabio just right at home here. Love and I wish they do more of this. That little flamenco guitar section in the middle. So good. So good. Black-Hearted Soul. And I love the production of this album. Jens Bogren worked on this album. I think this album is one of their better sounding albums. Really good. Final Light, nice and heavy. Love the little Brazilian percussive beats throughout. Really, really good. Storm of Emotions is a great slow builder. Nice use of keyboards in the background. Fabio sounds terrific. Synchronicity 2 is really well done, right? it's maybe not needed, but I think it's really interesting to have a band like this do a song like that, right? Really cool.
Like,
What's that?
Did they exceed what you thought they might do with it?
Yeah, because it's like, you know me with covers. I'm kind of like, it's like, unless you're going to do something a little bit different with it or make it your own, it's like, why bother, right? But yeah, I definitely think it's pretty cool, and totally unexpected. Like I said, would I have rather had another new track, original track? Yeah, but it's still really, really cool. Violet Sky, I absolutely adore. To me, that's as close as to Doom as a band like this will ever get. And you know how much I love Doom, so it's really, really good. Title track's got Simone. That's okay, it's a softie, but it's well done. Upper Levels, rhythmically, is a total monster. Really great prog metal piece. Crushing Room is just dramatic and just heavy. I love that. Perfect Symmetry. Again, we've heard that title before, right? But the guitars are just ripping on that. Love that one. And then, again, Silent Call closes out the album on a bland note. But Raphael, who sings a couple tracks on here, it proves to be a really good singer. It's nice to have that secret weapon there, right? Which I think is really cool for a band like this. And, who knew? Just all of a sudden out of the blue, it's like, oh, he's going to sing a couple tracks. And you listen to it, like, whoa, he's really good. So I think that's cool. And you have to wonder going forward if they'll utilize him more to kind of complement Fabio in spots where maybe he fits a little bit better. But I love when bands have like two singers that can both complement each other, both sound really different. So so today this is my number one, but it could be supplanted by this one next week at any time. But I think, as you can see by both of our rankings, everyone, that we were very different throughout most of the catalog. And that really just goes to show you the strength of this catalog. So I think that really anybody who's looking to do this similar exercise could have completely different rankings, because there's a lot to love in this catalog, a lot to love. I think for me, George, the only drawback to this catalog is that some of these albums are maybe a little overly long, but that's a product of the CD age. And they tend to want to close out their albums with mellow ballads or orchestral pieces and whatnot, where I wish they would go out with something really strong. But otherwise, top notch, whatever the lineup is, whoever's singing, great stuff. And I think we've hit home this whole idea that this band does power metal with a healthy dose of prog. And that is what makes them so unique. And throwing in all these like Brazilian ethnic elements and instruments from time to time, and these orchestral bits, is what sets them apart from everybody else.
Yeah, if you have an open mind to power metal, but you wish it was a little less straight and trite, these are your guys, because they put some frills on it.
Yep, for sure.
Stop with the 1 minute intros, guys. No bueno.
Yeah, and they're not the only band who's doing it, but
no, not even close. That's the problem.
Yeah, we don't need it. We don't need it. Just kick off the album. We don't need this little kind of sweeping, here's what we're going to do to draw you in. We're going to get drawn in from, blasting drums and guitars. We don't need the orchestral intro.
I think the one on Cycles of Life, I was noticing, like, why is this a separate track in this? This should just be the intro to the first song. Why are you putting a separate track in this? There's something about that they think that's clever, or producers get in there and they think we need this, and you don't need it.
No, you don't. Because it's because some of these intros are actually kind of cool, but if they were just part of the regular song, it would just, so instead of a 4.5 minute opener, you've got a 5.5 minute opener, right? With that included, and that's fine. So
don't try and make me think it's another song, because it's not.
Right. Because you know what? For all the people who do the streaming stuff on like Spotify and whatnot, they're not going to listen to those intros anyway.
No, click.
Right, exactly. So it's like a waste of time. It's like, if you're not going to incorporate them, then just don't do them. Anyway, for those watching who are fans already, rank these albums as you like them. If you've never experienced the music of Angra before, I think you have a lot of places to go to check them out, and come back after you've done so and let us know what you think. And we'll see you next week here on Ranking the Albums. Next week will be Grant Arthur's coming back. He and I will be ranking the albums of the South Carolina, North Carolina. I don't remember. Somewhere in the Carolinas here in the States. Nantucket. They're sort of Southern rock meets AOR meets, I don't know. They're hard to classify, but that's they don't have a lot of albums. I think they got five or six albums. So it's coming up next week here on Ranking ranking the albums. And what do we got coming up this week? We've got Hudson Valley Squares happening tomorrow. We're going to be doing a neat little, oh God, what do we call it? Kind of like not like a contest, but a little game based on something we've seen all over social media where they have this whole big, huge list of 80s bands. And the whole focus is to take a look at all these bands and how many have you seen throughout the years. And you get like 1 point for every band you've seen. And then I've thrown a little wrinkle in there that if you've seen any of these bands more than 5 times, you get 2 points. So we're going to kind of talk about all these bands and how many times we've seen them all and the points we have and see who's seen them the most and stories about shows and things like that and why we've missed some of them and why we didn't care to see some of them. That's all coming up on the Hudson Valley Squares tomorrow. So it's going to be a wacky show. Tune in for that. And we got, of course, George and I coming up on In the Prog Seat next week. And we've got, if you missed it, go back and check out 4 Fusion Friday from Friday evening. It's all about the saxophone. Really fun show. Don't go moving around on the channel without clicking on that and checking that out. And also the review crew from last night. George was on that as well. So go check out all this great content and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, way down there, link to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, and our Cameo page. And thanks in advance for all your support there. We'll see you soon here with more stuff for George Lamie. I'm Pete Pardo. Tune in next week for Ranking the Albums with Nantucket. Till then, have a good rest of the weekend and a good week, everybody. Take care.